He built his fortune singing about love, dancing, and endless nights. But this summer, on the opening night of a brand new tour, 77-year-old Lionel Richie sat down in the middle of one of his biggest hits and told a stadium full of fans that something was wrong. What happened next worried millions of people who grew up loving his music, and it raised a question nobody wants to ask about the legends we grew up with. How much longer can they keep doing this? On the night of June 24th, 2026, Lionel Richie, the Grammy-winning voice behind the Commodores and a longtime judge on American Idol, walked onto the stage at Grand Casino Arena in St. Paul, Minnesota, for the very first show of his new tour with Earth, Wind, and Fire. 10,000 fans packed the arena for what was supposed to be a joyful kickoff to a 26-date run across North America. Scheduled to wrap up in Austin, Texas, in the middle of August. Just hours earlier, Richie had been online posting about rehearsals and soundcheck, telling fans in St. Paul that they would be the very first audience to see the show. Everything pointed to a normal night. For about 55 minutes, that's exactly what it was. Richie moved through his catalog of hits with the same energy fans had come to expect for decades. Then, during the ninth song of the night, his 1986 classic, Dancing on the Ceiling, he sat down on a platform on the stage and told the crowd he was feeling dizzy. He tried to keep the mood light, joking that when you're feeling dizzy, you should just sit yourself down, and pointing out that it was the first time in the song's history he had ever performed it while seated. Then he added a line that felt like a joke in the moment, but sounded a lot more serious in hindsight. That a bad sign. He didn't stop the show entirely. Instead, he moved over to the piano and performed 3 Times a Lady while still seated, turning what should have been a routine performance into something far more emotional, as fans realized their idol was pushing through discomfort just to keep the night going. When that song ended, Richie told the crowd there would be an intermission, adding that it was so he wouldn't fall over. He left the stage, and his band kept playing for about 15 minutes, while everyone waited to see if he'd come back. He never did. Closed at 11 p.m., roughly 40 minutes after the break began. The band's saxophone player, Dino Saldo, walked up to the microphone and delivered the news fans had been dreading. Lionel wasn't feeling well and wouldn't be able to finish the show. A short statement from Richie's team soon followed, echoing the same message. According to multiple entertainment outlets, paramedics treated Richie backstage before he was taken to a hospital as a precaution. It's worth being precise here, because a lot of noise tends to spread online after moments like this. No hospital was named publicly, no doctor spoke on the record, and nobody claimed to know exactly what happened once Richie left the arena. What is confirmed through first-hand videos and reporting from outlets that were actually tracking the tour is that he left the stage early, was seen by paramedics, and was taken to be checked out. In the search for an explanation, one detail traveled further than any official statement. John Paris, the drummer for Earth, Wind, and Fire, spoke to a local Minnesota newspaper after the show and said he didn't notice anything wrong with Richie before he went on stage. In his view, Richie simply looked a little dehydrated. That comment took on a life of its own online, but it's important to be clear about what it actually was. One bandmate's personal impression, not a diagnosis from a doctor, and not a statement from Richie's own camp. It might turn out to be accurate. It might only be part of a bigger picture. Either way, reporters covering the story noted that Richie had spent close to an hour performing in a full leather jacket and leather pants under hot stage lights, sweating visibly through the set. At 77 years old, that combination alone, heavy clothing, physical performance, and stage heat, is enough to explain real strain on the body, whether or not dehydration turns out to be the whole story. In the days immediately after, there was no official diagnosis and no word on whether Richie had been released from the hospital. His representatives didn't respond right away to media requests, which isn't unusual after a moment like this. Teams often go quiet for a bit while they figure out what's actually going on and try to protect someone's privacy during a scary moment. The tour's next stop in Chicago was still on the schedule at first, but staying on a schedule and actually happening are two different things, and within a day, Live Nation confirmed that the Chicago show and the following date in Columbus, Ohio, were both being postponed. The announcement said Richie had been advised by doctors to rest and return to full health, and that he was heartbroken to postpone the shows. The tour was expected to pick back up on June 30th in Pittsburgh. It's also worth remembering that Richie has been the target of fake death hoaxes before, including one earlier in 2026 that spread online before being debunked. That history makes it tempting to lump this story in with those kinds of rumors. But this situation was fundamentally different. It was reported by established news organizations, not anonymous accounts. Thousands of people in the arena filmed it happening in real time. His own team made an announcement inside the venue itself. Named individuals, including a fellow musician, spoke to reporters on the record. That's about as far from a hoax as a story can get, which is exactly why it's worth taking seriously, while still sticking to what's actually been confirmed rather than the most dramatic version circulating on social media. And thankfully, the story didn't end on a scary note. Richie missed 2 shows, but he didn't cancel the tour. By June 30th, he was back on stage in Pittsburgh, and the following night in Detroit. On July 4th, he posted an update to fans directly, thanking them for their messages and support and saying he was doing well and grateful. He specifically called out Pittsburgh and Detroit as joyful nights filled with real energy and told fans he was ready to keep the tour going. It was a reminder that a scary moment on stage isn't always the end of the story. Sometimes it's just a pause. Still, the gap between the fear that spread online in the first day or two and the reassuring update that came later says a lot about how quickly a health scare involving a beloved public figure can spiral into speculation before the actual facts catch up. For a stretch of time, fans genuinely didn't know whether they'd see him back on stage that summer, and that uncertainty is exactly why it matters to separate what's been confirmed from what's simply been assumed or repeated online. This wasn't an isolated moment in the music world, either. Only 5 days before Richie's health scare, 81-year-old Rod Stewart had to stop his own concert in Utah to receive oxygen after nearly fainting on stage, with many pointing to the high altitude of the venue as a possible factor. Seeing 2 legendary performers, both in their late 70s and 80s, run into health scares within days of each other is a reminder of something bigger than either individual moment. These artists are still doing full arena shows, night after night, city after city, well into an age when most people have long since slowed down. Their love for performing clearly hasn't faded. But bodies do change with age, even bodies that have spent an entire lifetime on stage. And there's something both moving and a little unsettling about watching that tension play out in real time in front of thousands of fans. It's a dynamic fans of aging legends are seeing more and more often, as artists who built their legacies decades ago keep choosing the road over retirement, even as their bodies ask for a different pace. For Lionel Richie, this was never going to be treated as just another concert. He was born in Tuskegee, Alabama, rose to fame with the Commodores, recorded Endless Love alongside Diana Ross, co-wrote We Are the World with Michael Jackson, created enduring hits like Hello and All Night Long, and has spent years as a judge on American Idol. This is someone whose voice has been part of the cultural soundtrack for close to 50 years. That voice, though, has faced its own battles before. Over a span of 4 years, Richie underwent 4 separate throat surgeries as doctors tried to figure out what was wrong. Each operation was meant to fix the issue, but the problems kept coming back. At one point, doctors warned him he could lose his singing voice entirely if it continued. For a performer whose entire career was built on that voice, it was devastating news. After years of frustration with traditional treatment, Richie eventually turned to a holistic doctor who suggested the real culprit wasn't his throat at all. It was acid reflux, likely made worse by eating certain foods too close to bedtime, which allowed stomach acid to travel upward while he slept and irritated his throat night after night. Instead of more surgery, the recommendation was to change his diet. That shift in approach gave him a new sense of hope after years of fearing the worst. And it's a reminder that sometimes the answer to a stubborn health problem isn't found in the operating room, but in everyday habits. Long before any of that, Lionel Brockman Richie Jr. was born on June 20th, 1949, in Tuskegee, Alabama. His father worked as a systems analyst for the U.S. Army. His mother was a teacher who later became a school principal, and his grandmother was a pianist who loved classical music. He grew up on the campus of Tuskegee Institute, in a house that had once been given to his grandparents by educator Booker T. Washington. He went on to earn a tennis scholarship to Tuskegee, graduated with a degree in economics, and even considered becoming a priest before deciding to pursue music instead, despite not being able to read or write musical notation at the time. His musical career began with a series of R&B groups in the mid-1960s before he joined the Commodores in 1968 as a singer and saxophone player. The group signed with Atlantic Records before landing at Motown, opening for the Jackson 5 early on, and eventually becoming one of the most successful soul groups of their era, with funky hits like Brick House alongside slower ballads like Easy and 3 Times a Lady. Richie's songwriting talent soon extended beyond the group. In 1974, he had his first real success as a songwriter when Happy People, a track he co-wrote, was recorded by The Temptations and became a #1 R&B hit. He went on to write Lady for Kenny Rogers, which hit #1 in 1980, and also produced Rogers' hit album the following year, cementing a friendship between the two that lasted for decades. By 1981, Richie was recording Endless Love with Diana Ross, a song that topped charts in multiple countries and became one of Motown's biggest-selling singles. His solo career took off in 1982, and his second album, Can't Slow Down, became a massive hit, powered by the Caribbean-flavored All Night Long, which he performed at the closing ceremony of the 1984 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. That same era gave the world Hello, one of his signature ballads, along with Say You, Say Me, which won both an Academy Award and a Grammy. In 1985, he teamed up with Michael Jackson to write We Are the World for Famine Relief Efforts, a song that became a global phenomenon in its own right. Through the following decades, Richie continued releasing music, slowed his touring pace at times, and later found a whole new audience as a judge on American Idol starting in 2018, a role he's now held for years. In 2023, he performed at the coronation concert for King Charles III, and in 2025, he released his memoir, which climbed onto the New York Times bestseller list. His personal life has had its own ups and downs. He married his college sweetheart, Brenda Harvey, in 1975, and the couple took in a young girl named Nicole when she was just 2 years old, later formally adopting her when she turned 9. Nicole would go on to become well known in her own right. That marriage eventually ended after a widely reported incident in the late 1980s. Richie later married Diane Alexander in 1995, and the couple had 2 children, Miles and Sophia, before divorcing in 2004. He's since become a grandfather multiple times over and has spent years supporting causes like breast cancer research, inspired in part by his own grandmother's cancer diagnosis in her 80s, a battle she survived, living on to the age of 103. A story Richie has said inspired him throughout his own life. Across his career, Richie has collected 4 Grammy Awards, including Best Male Pop Vocal Performance for Truly, Album of the Year for Can't Slow Down, Producer of the Year that same year, and Song of the Year for We Are the World. He became the first artist to receive a Diamond Album certification from the Recording Industry Association of America, an honor reserved for albums that sell at least 10 million copies in the United States. His work has also been honored well beyond music, with an Academy Award and a Golden Globe both going to Say You, Say Me, a Golden Globe nomination for Endless Love, a Kennedy Center honor in 2017, and an honorary doctorate from Berklee College of Music. So where does that leave things now? The good news is that, as of his own update to fans, Richie is doing well back on stage and grateful for the outpouring of support he received. A scary night in St. Paul turned into a short pause rather than the end of a tour, but it's still a moment worth paying attention to, both for what it says about one artist's health and for what it says about the toll that decades of nonstop performing can take on the body, even for someone whose passion for the stage clearly hasn't dimmed. What do you think about Lionel Richie continuing to tour at this stage of his life and career? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.